Okay, so we are working on lesson 2 of your workbook, which is on page 563. And this is just a continuation of what we learned in lesson 1. So in lesson 1, you were introduced to the equation y is equal to mx plus b. And this is the equation of a line in slope y-intercept form. So the number that is found in front of your x is going to be the slope of the line. And then the constant is the y-intercept of your graph. Okay, so that's what we did in lesson 1. So let's look at the class examples in lesson 2. Write the equation of a line passing through this point, and it has this slope. So I'm just going to go like this, and that is equal to m. So first of all, we know that the equation of a line is this. Y is equal to mx plus b. I then know that my slope is 5 over 2. So I'm going to take out this m, and I'm going to substitute in 5 over 2. So that would give me y is equal to 5 over 2x. And then I need my y-intercept. So it doesn't say like the b value is this or the y-intercept is this. They give you a point. So some of you will be able to look at this point and say, and know exactly what this point is, but a lot of you to begin with might have to think about this. This point, if I said plot that point on a Cartesian plane, you would say, okay, if that's my y-axis, this is my x, they want x to be 0 and y to be 2. That point would be right here. And what that point essentially is, that is the y-intercept. So this point here gives you the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is, remember, whenever x is 0. So if you see a coordinate and x is 0 and then there's a y value, that's your b value. So my y-intercept is 2, or my b value is 2. So that would be the equation of a line that passes, or that has a slope of 5 over 2, and it passes through the point 0, 2. It means it has a y-intercept of 2, is how you would do that. Okay, number 2. Each line on the grid passes through points with integer coordinates. Integer coordinates means that each of these lines have nice coordinates that you'd be able to get. Like that would be an integer coordinate because that coordinate would be -2, 5. This would not be an integer coordinate. That would be a decimal, so not an integer. Okay. In each case, state the slope and y-intercept of the line and then determine the equation of the line. So let's start, I'll do green, line 1. So we're going to figure out the equation of line 1. Okay, the equation of a line is y is equal to mx plus b. You always want to look, if you're given a line, well, what's the y-intercept? What's the b value? So the b value for this line here, the y-intercept is -4. So far the equation of this line is going to be mx minus 4. From the y-intercept, you just follow the slope until you get to another good point. So for example, I believe it's this one, but I'll double check because I could tell that that's a nice point as well. And it looks like that's a nice point, but it looks like that would be an integer coordinate. So according to that, if I follow the slope, I'm rising 1, running 3. I'm just going to double check. Rise of 1, run of 1, 2, 3. Yes, I get back on my line. If I fall 1 and go to the left, 1, 2, 3, I get back on the line. So that's the slope, that's the y-intercept. I could now write the equation of line 1. is going to be y is equal to m is 1/3 x minus 4. And that would be the equation of line 1. Let's figure out the equation of line 2. So I'm going to do this one in blue. So y is equal to mx plus b. I need to figure out slope and y-intercept. You always start with your y-intercept. So the y-intercept is right here. If that's 5, this is 0, the y-intercept is 2. So the b value of this graph is at 2. From there, we need to follow the slope until we get to an integer coordinate, which would be that guy. Or I could have gone in this direction and it would have been that guy. So let's say I was going down, I would go minus fall of 3, run of 2. So let's see if that's correct. So fall of 3, run of 2. From here to here, I'm going up 3 to the left 2. So up 3 to the left 2. So it doesn't matter which direction you go in, because in both directions, you're going to have a negative and then 3/2. Now that you have your y-intercept and your slope, you just put those into your equation and you are done. So line 2 is y is equal to mx, that's my m. So negative 3/2 x plus 2. Wait a second. Oh yeah, sorry. That's correct. At first I was thinking this is a negative slope, and it is a negative slope, and it's showing me that it's negative right there. And my y-intercept is 2. So those would be the 2 equations for class example number 2. Okay, class example number 3. Determine the equation of the following lines. So this class example, this is closest to what you're going to be doing on a test. So I always tell students to star this. And this is a really good test question because this is going to show me if you understand this stuff. So what they're doing in this first one is they're actually giving me 2 different equations of 2 different lines. And I'm going to pick apart things from both of these, and then I'm going to make a new equation. So what they're saying is determine the equation of a line parallel to this guy. So if they use the word parallel or perpendicular, they are talking about slope. So the only thing I need to get from this equation here is this slope. So they want an equation of a line parallel to this. And we learned in the when we did parallel and perpendicular lines that parallel means that they're equal, right? So the equation of my new line is going to have an equal slope to this line, so 1/3. If they said the word perpendicular, and I think I'm going to add one, yeah, that's going to be perpendicular. If they wanted perpendicular to this line, I would have to take the negative inverse of this. So if this is 1/3, perpendicular would be -3. But they want parallel, so that's my new slope of my new line. Then the second thing, it says the same y-intercept as this guy. So all I need to take from this equation is the y-intercept, which is my b value. That's the y-intercept. Once you have the slope and the y-intercept, I now have the equation of my new line. Y is equal to mx, so 1/3 x minus 7. Slope, y-intercept, that is the equation of my new line. Okay, B. Determine the equation of a line passing through this point, okay, and perpendicular to the line joining these points. So the first thing, again, if they use that word perpendicular, say to yourself, what are they talking about? They are talking about the slope. So we need to figure out what the slope of this line is, and then we're going to figure out what perpendicular slope would be. So if you're given 2 points and they want the slope of these 2 points, you say the first point is x1, y1, the second point is x2, y2, and we're going to figure out the slope of those 2 points. So the slope of 2 points is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the slope of this would be y2, which is 0, minus -6, all over x2, which is -5, minus x1, which is 2. 0 minus -6, 2 negatives gives you a positive. 0 plus 6 is 6. -5 minus 2 is -7. So this is my slope, okay, of these 2 points. So the slope is -6/7. They want the equation of a line perpendicular to this. So they want it perpendicular to this. So perpendicular, if they wanted parallel, our slope would be -6/7, it'd be the exact same slope. But because they want it perpendicular, if this guy is negative, this guy has to be positive, and it's got to be the inverse. It's the negative inverse. So 7, 6. This is going to be my new slope. So I'm going to make an equation of a line with this new slope here. And the only thing I'm missing now is the y-intercept, the b value. This right here is the y-intercept. Because remember, the y-intercept of a graph is when x is equal to 0. So my y-intercept is 9, or my b value is 9. Therefore, the equation of this line is, okay, it's mx plus b. So the slope is 7, 6, x plus 9. And that's how you do that second one. What I want you to do, because this question is so important, we're going to do one more to practice this, and then there's several in the homework that you'll see. There's only 5 questions in the homework, but one has several parts to it. I want you to write this down. So either at the bottom of your page, or you guys, if you look at page 562, which is the previous page to this, you've got a huge blank page. So if you want, just go to the previous page, 562, and write this down. So determine the equation of a line with the same y-intercept as this and perpendicular to this. So determine the equation of a line with the same y-intercept of this guy and perpendicular to this. So take a minute and write that. Okay. So what they want us to do is I've got to take something from here and I've got to take something from here, and I'm going to join them together to make a new line. So from this first one, they want the y-intercept. So you say, well, what's the y-intercept? Was it 3 or -4? It's that guy right there. So my new line is going to have a b value or a y-intercept of -4. The second thing, it says, and it's perpendicular to this line. So underline like the word perpendicular and say, okay, perpendicular is referring to slope. So I need to get the slope of this line here. So get the slope. I want you to isolate the slope of that guy and then write down what's perpendicular to that. So hopefully you see that the slope of this guy is 4/5. If you understand perpendicular and parallel, if they want a perpendicular to this, if this guy is positive, this one must be negative. The inverse of 4/5 is that. And now I could write the equation by line. And you should be getting -5/4, 5/4x minus 4. And that would be it. So it's got a negative slope, and it's going to cut the y-axis at -4. Okay, let's do the last question. So this question here, we're going to do it because this is a really common question in 20-1 and 30-1. So what they're doing is they're giving you a screenshot from a graphing calculator. And you need to, especially when you get to 30-1, need to understand how this is read. So the first thing that I just want to point out that you need to understand from here, because it looks like, so the hatch marks aren't really shown nicely, so I want you to sort of put your hatch marks in nicely. A lot of students, without looking at this and me teaching you how to read this, a lot of students would say, like, it's going through X at 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's going through Y at 2. And that would be like a really good guess, right? Because that's what it appears to be doing. But what we have to be able to do is we need to be able to read these two. This is telling you, what it says is it says X SCL, which is the scale on the x-axis. So just make note, this is your x-axis scale is equal to 5. What that means, if they want on my x-axis, and I know this is my x-axis, if they want this scale to be equal to 5, it means each hatch mark is worth 5 units. So this would be 5, 10, 15. This guy here is 20. So your x-intercept, you guys, is 20. Then let's look down here at the y scale. So here's my y-axis. This is my y-axis. And this is telling you what they want the scale to be. So y scale is equal to 7. So what that means is each hatch mark on the y-axis is worth 7. So this is 7, and this would be 14. Okay? So based on that, they want a couple of things that we're going to do. So, and again, I would consider this question to be more of a standard of excellence question because this is the same stuff you're going to be doing in Math 30, right? It's dealing with these scales. So from here, can you come up with the equation of this line? And we should be able to do that. I'm going to show you 2 different ways that we could do it. So y is equal to mx plus b. We know that b is the y-intercept. And that's my b value. right? So my B value or my Y-intercept is 14. So I know that it is mx plus 14. Now we just need to figure out the slope. And this is what I'm going to show you the two different ways to do this one. Some students would be able to say, okay, from this point here to this point. Some students would be able to look at this and you'd be able to say, what are you falling? So you are falling 14. And you are running from here to here, 20. Okay, you would need to reduce this. So divide each of these by 2. So negative 14 over 20 reduces to negative 7 over 10. So the equation of this line, or sorry, this line right here, is y is equal to mx. So m is, my slope is negative 7/10 plus b. And that's how you would do this. An alternate way that you could get this, so you're going to be doing this for your homework, and I'll just quickly show you, we'll look at the question after, but it's going to be 3 different screenshots. So the alternate way, if you are having a hard time, like I think in your homework, it doesn't give you numbers on your, or maybe it does, but let's just say you're like, what's another way I could figure out the slope? What you would have to do is you'd have to write, well, what point is this? X is 0, Y is 14. What this point is, X is 20, Y is 0. And then you would have had to say X1, Y1. No, it's showing that your mic is on. So X1, Y1, this guy, X2, Y2. So let's just double check. Y2 minus Y1, you might have to do this in your homework if it's not easy to see, over X2 minus X1. So Y2 minus Y1, 0 minus 14, over X2 minus X1, 20 minus 0. That gives us negative 14 over 20, which is exactly what we had here. And you would reduce that to negative 7 over 10. So I'll show you that question when we get to it. Okay, so your homework questions for this lesson are going to be questions number 1 to 5. So questions 1 to 5. And let's look at those questions now because we're going to talk about a couple of them. And then this is what I'll assign tomorrow. Okay, so for question number 1, I'm going to do 2 with you that are a little bit trickier. Write the equation of the line. So some are going to be super simple, right? Like A. Slope of 4, that's going to go in for M, Y-intercept of 6. So this one we could do in like 2 seconds. 4x minus 6, and you're done. B is going to be really simple. C. Okay, so let's do C together. Determine the equation of a line passing through the origin with a slope of this. So that's going to be our M value. Now we need to figure out what our B value is. Passing through the origin, you guys, is right here. So that's the origin of our graph, and that coordinate is 0, 0. So the y-intercept, if it's passing through this point, and actually the slope is going to be negative 3/5, so the graph is going to look something like this. but the y-intercept for C is going to be 0. So if we were to write this, y is equal to mx plus b, you would say, okay, this is your m value. And then you'd say plus 0. But then at the end of the day, you don't need to write that plus 0. So you would just take that out, and this would be the equation of your line. So if I quickly show you that on your calculator, -3/5 x. So to quickly show you that, I don't even have to type in that plus 0. So -3/5 x, it goes through the origin. This is a negative slope, okay? For D, y-intercept of that, so there's our B value, parallel to this. So this line is y is equal to 1x plus 0, right? We don't need to put a plus 0, but the slope of this line is 1. So what's parallel to 1? 1. So you should be able to get D. And the last one I want to give you, I believe, is J. So let's do J together. And you'll do all of them. Write the equation of a line with the same y-intercept as this guy. So if you're working with me right now, could you guys please box in what the y-intercept of this graph is? Okay, so that's my y-intercept. And perpendicular to this. So perpendicular, remember, has to do with slope. So the slope of this guy is C over 1. If this is C over 1, what would perpendicular to C over 1 be? So if this is positive, this one must be negative. The reciprocal of that is 1 over C. And now writing it in the form of mx plus b, the equation of my line would be, my new slope is -1 over c, x plus my b value, they wanted it to be the same letter, b. And that would be your answer. Okay, so that's, you're going to finish off number 1. Number 2 is going to be straightforward. We already did number 2. Number 3. So number 3 is where you're going to have to do the scales, right? So just to show you, these scales, you guys, so I'm not going to do A with you because it has a scale of 1. So basically what that means is like that intercept would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They want that to be at 9. Right? So the x-intercept of this graph is 9. The y-intercept of this graph, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. You figure out how you want to do the slope. So a lot of you should be able to just go, how many are you rising? How many are you running? So that should be fairly simple to do. And then the equation. Let's look at maybe this one, C. So if I'm looking at the scale, so for x's, they want the scale to be each hatch mark is only worth 1 unit. So that's -1, -2, -3, -4. So that one's not bad. For the y's, each hatch mark is worth 3. So if I was going up, it would be 3, 6, 9, but I'm going down. So -3, -6, -9. So that guy is -3. Oh, and then I should do this. -4, 0, 0, -3. Okay, so you're going to do B and C. So that's question 3. Question 4, we did one very similar to this. And question 5, we did one very similar, just determining equations of lines. So I'm going to stop the video.